depended on you losing a fight. On purpose. But what if you realized the fight wasn't staged, and your opponent was a king armed with deadly weapons and a royal grudge? This is the story of Lieutenant Sienna Ray, the human who was supposed to fail, but chose to rewrite her fate instead. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and show a thumbs up by liking the video. Now, let's dive into this incredible story of courage, cunning, and the battle that no one saw coming. Lieutenant Sienna Ray had never been one for ceremony. She preferred the sharp click of boots on steel floors, the steady hum of shuttle engines, and the clean precision of orders followed in chaos. But today, none of that mattered. She stood, motionless in the command chamber of Earth's Intergalactic Affairs Division, staring at a glowing mission briefing like it had personally insulted her. "You want me to do what, Admiral?" she asked, blinking once, slow and deliberate. Her voice carried the calm weight of someone who knew exactly how absurd the situation was, but was still willing to give the universe a chance to explain itself. Across from her, a holographic image of Admiral Tolan Vesk flickered, looking every bit as exhausted as she felt. "You heard correctly, Lieutenant. The King of Naruthal has formally requested a human combatant to engage him in ceremonial battle, and by the terms of our treaty negotiations, you're it." Sienna crossed her arms, the soft hiss of her exosuit responding to her shift. "Respectfully, sir, that sounds like either a bad joke or a very clever trap." "I'm not laughing, and I doubt they are either," Admiral Vesk replied. "Their culture runs on ritual combat. It's how they handle politics, pride, and, apparently, trade negotiations. This isn't a trap, it's a performance. And Earth's role in this performance is, what? Comic relief?" Vesk sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose through the projection like he could massage away the politics. "You're not expected to win, Ray. Just make a decent show of it. Swing a weapon around, dodge a few hits, lose with grace. The Naruthali think humans are primitive but plucky. Playing into that image helps us secure new trade lanes through their space." Sienna stared for a beat longer than necessary. "So I'm going to be punched for the good of economics?" "Diplomatic theater, Lieutenant. Everyone knows the script. The king gets to look powerful, we get access to faster routes, it's a win-win. Well, except for you personally." "Fantastic," she muttered. "Always dreamed of being humiliated on a galactic stage." "Your sarcasm is noted and ignored," the Admiral replied. "You leave tonight." Within hours, Sienna found herself aboard a high-speed diplomatic shuttle, flanked by two stern-faced pilots and one overly cheerful Ambassador Vakan, who hadn't stopped explaining Naruthal customs since takeoff. "They value poise," he said, adjusting his robes as if preparing for a pageant. "They respect effort even when it's hopeless, so look dignified. Don't smirk. Definitely don't laugh if someone trips, and above all, never comment on their tail posture." Sienna blinked. "Tail posture?" Vakan nodded with the seriousness of a man discussing nuclear codes. "Very sensitive topic. Just pretend tails don't exist." When their ship landed on a floating platform encased in shimmering light, Sienna stepped into a scene that looked like a fantasy novel exploded onto a sci-fi set. Towers of living metal spiraled into the clouds, energy barriers shimmered like rainbow soap bubbles, and everything seemed to glow with a soft, otherworldly pulse. It was beautiful in the way a storm is beautiful, breathtaking, and also ready to crush you. The welcoming ceremony lasted far too long, complete with symbolic gifts, synchronized nodding, and poetry delivered in 3 languages she didn't speak. She kept her face neutral, her posture perfect and her internal screaming quiet. Inside the palace, she was shown to her chambers, lavish rooms with ceilings high enough to echo and furniture designed for giants. It was clearly meant to impress, or perhaps just remind her how small and out of place she truly was. When her escort finally left, Sienna let out a breath and loosened her uniform collar. "So this is what it feels like to be the galaxy's sacrificial lamb," she muttered. The silence answered back, or it did until it wasn't silent anymore. "You are less unimpressive than expected," said a voice from nowhere. Sienna spun around, hands ready, until a shimmer formed near the balcony. A tall, narrow figure stepped forward, a Naruthali female with scales the color of storm clouds and eyes that missed nothing. "I am Nalem," she said, "assigned to assist you by the Queen herself." Sienna didn't drop her guard. "Assist me with what exactly?" "The truth," Nalem replied, stepping forward calmly. "This ceremonial match you've been asked to participate in is not as harmless as your leaders believe. The king does not plan to entertain, he plans to dominate. And if you fail, truly fail, it won't just be your pride that suffers." The room felt colder suddenly. "So this is a trap," Sienna said, voice low. Nalem nodded. "A calculated one. The king has something to prove, and he has chosen you as the proof. But the Queen disagrees. She believes your presence here could shift the future of human-alien relations, for the better, if of course you survive." "And what does survival look like exactly?" Nalem gave a thin, unreadable smile. "It looks like fighting not just for show but to remind this empire that underestimating humanity is a mistake." Sienna stared at her, the weight of the mission finally settling into her bones. "Guess I better rewrite the script," she said. Sienna Ray had always believed in trusting her instincts, and right now they were screaming at her. The palace of Naruthal was stunning, no doubt, a massive structure of twisting towers, shimmering lights, and floating corridors that defied gravity and logic. But beneath the beauty, something felt wrong. Everything was too polished, too rehearsed. She wasn't just a guest here. She was being watched, weighed, and measured. Everywhere she walked, silent guards tracked her movements with eyes that didn't blink. Servants bowed just a little, too low, and conversations ended the moment she entered a room. Her chambers were filled with gifts, rich fabrics, sweet-smelling fruit, even a small sculpture made of singing metal. But none of it felt welcoming. It felt like decoration for a cage. Ambassador Vacan had vanished after the ceremony, supposedly, to handle political arrangements, which Sienna figured was code for "stay out of danger." He hadn't left her entirely alone, though. In his place, she'd been assigned a Naruthali attendant named Keelan. He was quiet, polite, and knew exactly when to vanish and reappear like some well-trained ghost. Sienna had asked him 3 times what he really thought about the duel. Each time he only said, "It is tradition," and nothing more. It was after the evening meal, long after the palace lights dimmed and the halls emptied of music, that Keelan finally broke the silence. He stepped into her room without warning, closing the tall crystal door behind him. "You shouldn't trust what you've been told," he said softly. Sienna looked up from the ceremonial staff she'd been inspecting, arching an eyebrow. "You mean the part where I pretend to fight and lose with dignity? Or the part where I become a public example of why humans should stay out of politics?" Keelan stepped closer, his voice even lower now. "The match is not for show. The king plans to use real weapons, illegal ones." She stared at him, uncertain if she'd heard correctly. "That's not part of the agreement. The king believes you are more dangerous than you appear. He wants to prove that humans are not just primitive, but weak. He intends to win, by any means, and embarrass you permanently." Sienna stood up, all pretense of calm gone. "So why tell me now?" "Because not everyone in this palace agrees with the king's view of your kind," Keelan replied. "The Queen believes Earth has more potential than anyone else is willing to admit. She believes this duel could be more than just a humiliation. It could be a turning point." Sienna crossed her arms. "And she sent you to help me? Why not come herself?" "Because appearances matter," he said simply. "And because she is being watched as closely as you are." He reached into a pouch at his waist and pulled out something small, an ornate bracelet, gleaming with embedded crystal. He held it out carefully. "This is yours, from the Queen. It looks ceremonial, but it's more than jewelry. It's a shield." She took it slowly, feeling the unexpected weight in her palm. "How strong is it?" "It won't stop a warship," Keelan said with a thin smile, "but it will keep you alive long enough to surprise him." Sienna turned the bracelet over, in her hand. "Why are you doing this? You barely know me." Because you're not just a soldier. You're a message, he said. If you show them what humans are truly capable of, adaptability, strategy, resilience, then everything changes. Not just for Earth, but for everyone the king keeps beneath his heel. She slipped the bracelet onto her wrist, hiding it under her sleeve. I thought I came here to lose. Now you're asking me to rewrite the ending. I'm asking you to be honest, Keelan said. To fight not the way they expect, but the way you know how. He turned to leave, then paused. And one more thing. The audience will be full of off-world diplomats. They won't say anything now, but they're watching. What happens in that arena will echo far beyond Naruthal. When the door shut behind him, Sienna sat in silence for a long time. The bracelet on her wrist pulsed faintly like a second heartbeat. She thought about everything Earth had gone through to get to this point. War, rebuilding, hope, and mistakes. The galaxy saw humans as charming, primitive creatures who didn't understand the rules. Maybe they were right about one thing. Humans didn't follow the rules. She rose from her seat, eyes focused, her mind sharpening with a clarity she hadn't felt in weeks. Tomorrow she would enter that arena not as a pawn in someone else's game, but as a player ready to change the board entirely. Let the king expect a performance. She would give him a lesson instead. The arena was nothing like Sienna Ray had imagined. It was a wide, open circle of polished stone, surrounded by steep seating that shimmered with light and color. Hundreds of Naruthali nobles filled the stands, their iridescent scales flashing like a living mosaic. Above them, energy shields arched overhead, humming quietly to keep any stray strikes from escaping into the crowd. Banners floated in the air, bearing the symbols of old victories and royal bloodlines. Everything about the place screamed tradition, pride, and control. Sienna stood at one end, dressed in her formal Earth military uniform, the hidden bracelet tight beneath her sleeve. She kept her face neutral, calm and unreadable, but inside her heart beat with steady determination. She hadn't slept much the night before. Instead, she had reviewed every move, every pattern, every piece of advice Keelan had given her. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a message, one she was ready to deliver. At the opposite end of the arena, King Raylos made his entrance. It wasn't subtle. A procession of attendants surrounded him, trumpets blaring and golden incense rising in the air. The king stood tall, taller than most of his kind, with golden armor that glowed faintly from embedded energy cells. His staff was long, decorated with ancient runes and humming with quiet power. His expression was calm, but his eyes locked on Sienna with clear intent. This was no ceremony for him. It was conquest. From the royal box above, Queen Celexa watched, with her usual composed expression. By her side stood Keelan, his gaze fixed on the arena. He gave the smallest nod when Sienna looked up, barely visible but enough to remind her she wasn't alone in this. A voice echoed across the space. The arena master, an older Naruthali with a scarred face, announced the terms of the demonstration. The match would continue until one fighter yielded or the master called it. The weapons were chosen by the king himself. As he spoke, 2 ceremonial staffs floated in on a platform, one for each combatant. They looked nearly identical. Long, balanced, elegant. But Sienna could see the glow of hidden tech in the king's weapon. Definitely more than just for show. She accepted her staff with a slight bow, testing the weight. It felt good in her hands, sturdy, reliable. She activated it with a flick of her wrist and the runes lit up with a soft blue glow. Across from her, the king spun his staff in a flashy display, clearly meant to impress the crowd. The gong sounded. The king moved first. He charged like a storm, his staff cutting through the air with practiced grace and explosive power. Sienna barely had time to block the first strike, and the impact sent a jolt up her arms. She stepped back quickly, adjusting her grip. The crowd roared in approval. The king didn't slow down. He attacked again and again, his strikes strong and sharp. Sienna moved carefully, defending and dodging. She didn't try to show off. She was studying, learning, Every step, every strike, she watched for patterns. His form was beautiful, but predictable. "Your people rely too much on running," the king said loudly, circling her. "Where is your strength, human?" Sienna didn't answer. She just waited. Then the opening came. The king swung high. Again, and Sienna planted her feet. She met his staff with her own in a solid block that shook the ground. The crowd gasped. The king blinked, surprised that she had held firm. "Allow me," she said, voice clear and sharp, "to demonstrate how humans really fight." She moved quickly, shifting from defense to offense. Her strikes were direct and precise, no wasted motion. She didn't try to overpower the king. She used balance, angles, and timing. Her training hadn't been in ceremonial combat. It had been in real battles on dirty ground with real consequences. The king stumbled, his rhythm broken. The crowd went silent. Sienna pressed forward. Not recklessly, calculated. She forced him to retreat step by step. His flashy spins turned into clumsy recoveries. When he tried to use the hidden energy in his staff, she blocked the surge with her bracelet. The glow flared briefly and vanished. The audience saw it. Whispers began to spread. King Raelos's face changed. No longer confident, he looked angry, embarrassed. "Enough!" he shouted, and the arena trembled. Extra nodes along his staff activated. Sienna recognized the forbidden tech Keelan had warned her about. He raised the staff overhead, glowing with far more power than a ceremonial weapon should have held. This wasn't about proving strength anymore. It was about crushing her. As the energy roared to life, Sienna didn't flinch. She watched his feet, his angle, his grip. At the last second, she dropped into a roll, sliding under the strike just as it hit. The ground behind her exploded, scattering stone and light. She came up behind the king, calm and steady. The audience gasped again. The mask had dropped. The duel was no longer a show. It was real. And so was she. King Raelos turned, his face twisted in disbelief. The golden shimmer of his armor was duller now, dulled by effort and confusion. He hadn't expected the human to still be standing. He certainly hadn't expected her to be behind him, poised and ready. The arena was deathly quiet. Nobles leaned forward in their seats. Advisors looked to each other, uncertain. And high, above them all, Queen Celexa sat perfectly still, her gaze locked on Sienna Ray. Sienna didn't strike. Not yet. She let the silence stretch just a little longer. Then in a calm voice that carried across the entire arena, she said, "You're not the only one who came prepared, Your Majesty." The king let out a low growl and turned back toward her with a sharp swing of his staff. But Sienna had already moved. Her steps were light, controlled, each one placed with intent. She wasn't just trying to survive anymore, she was directing the fight. She saw the shifts in his shoulders, the tension in his grip, the overreach in his strikes. He was powerful, but not efficient. Flashy, but not focused. She was faster, smarter, more adaptable. The staff clashed again, sparks flying. This time, Sienna didn't back down. She met the strikes head-on when she had to, redirected them when she could. Her movements were tighter now, a rhythm building in her muscles. The energy from the king's weapon flared dangerously, but her hidden shield absorbed each burst without fail. Each time it did, the crowd murmured louder. They saw it. They couldn't ignore it. The duel had shifted. Everyone knew it. King Raelos stepped back, breathing harder than before. His expression flickered with something close to frustration. "You were supposed to yield," he hissed. "You were meant to be humbled." Sienna didn't stop moving. "Maybe your expectations were the problem." He lunged again, wild now, driven more by pride than strategy. Sienna sidestepped, using his momentum against him. She struck the side of his leg with the flat of her staff, sending him stumbling. A ripple of shock passed through the nobles. This wasn't just resistance anymore. This was dominance. From the royal box, Queen Celexa stood slowly. Keelan leaned close to her and whispered something, but she didn't react. She simply watched, her eyes sharp and unreadable. Below, the king roared and activated the final level of his weapon. Runes along the staff's entire length lit up like a firework, glowing red and violet. The air around him shimmered with heat. Forbidden tech, unstable energy. This was no longer a ritual. This was war. Sienna's bracelet glowed in response, its crystals shifting colors as it adapted. She felt the heat rise in the air, the pulsing of dangerous power building like a storm. One wrong move now could mean real injury, or worse. But she didn't flinch. She advanced. Their weapons clashed in a thunder of sound and light. The arena shields strained, flickering with effort. Every eye in the crowd was locked on the battle. Advisors from other systems, silent observers from distant empires all watched as the human did what no one expected. She kept fighting. She refused to fall. The final blow came not with noise, but with silence. Sienna deflected one last strike, twisted her body in a tight spiral, and stopped just short of driving the butt of her staff into the king's chest. She held it there, hovering, unmoving. King Raylos froze, blinking down at the weapon that could have struck him but didn't. His weapon was no longer glowing. Its power had drained with that last strike, and so had his advantage. The arena held its breath. Sienna lowered her staff and took a single step back. "I believe we've demonstrated enough," she said. The king's eyes burned with something unspoken. Anger, maybe, or something closer to respect. Slowly, deliberately, he turned to the arena master and nodded. The master stepped forward and raised a hand. "The demonstration is concluded. Honor has been displayed on both sides." The crowd erupted, not in cheers, but in something deeper, a recognition, a shift. The human had not won, but she had not lost either. She had changed the rules. Queen Celexa sat again, her lips curling into the faintest smile. Keelan looked down at the arena, pride in his eyes. Sienna stood tall, breathing steady, the bracelet on her wrist dimming now that it was no longer needed. Later, in the quiet of her chambers, she sat alone, replaying the fight in her mind. There would be consequences, surely. Political debates, questions, and likely new assessments of Earth's place in the galactic order. But none of that mattered at the moment. What mattered was simple. She had been sent to lose. Instead, she had shown them who she really was, and the galaxy had watched.